In the world of real estate investing, there are hundreds of places to put your money. For those interested in beginning their real estate investment journeys, you should know where to look for red flags, how to get started, the best places to look for houses, and so much more. In this episode, Eddy Padron, a veteran in the house flipping business, will guide us to the steps to start flipping houses on the side. Welcome to the 529 Podcast, where we interview successful entrepreneurs to share their experiences and insights, and with others interested in beginning their own entrepreneurial journeys. I'm your host, Nathan Hantla, and today we have Eddy Padron, a full-time police officer who has managed to make almost $300,000 flipping houses on the side. Eddy has managed to combine his police knowledge and experience with house flipping to help reduce risks such as thefts and scams. And in this episode, he will share all of his tips to make sure you get the most out of your real estate investments. Eddy will also walk us through how to get started in flipping houses, where to locate the best properties and contractors, and more. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hey Eddy, welcome to the podcast.
How you guys doing?
Good, man. We're glad to have you on here. So, before we dive into the main topic, could you provide us with a glimpse into your background and kind of what sparked your interest in flipping houses?
My background is it's mostly law enforcement, and I had the opportunity through my wife's relative. He kind of talked to me a little bit about it, planted that seed in my head, and then we kept talking about it, and we were just waiting for the opportunity. And I'm not saying we were 100% ready, but, I did a little bit of reading prior and to getting into this, and then the opportunity presented itself. There was a burnt property down in West Texas, and we did what we had to do. We secured bought the house, we fixed it, and it was sold quickly right after we got done. It took us probably about, I don't remember the exact months. Just the rehab process was quite extensive. But yeah, it was a great learning experience. Then we just kept doing more afterwards.
I know you were also a police officer. How do you kind of balance your career in this side hustle?
To be honest with you, balance is the key to everything. My bread and butter is being a police officer. I'm working on hopefully soon. I don't know how many years, but I could retire as we speak. But that's the main thing that I have to focus on. I love doing what I do, but working for anybody, you're never going to get rich. For the most part, especially working in city government, you're not going to get rich. But I don't do this job to get rich. I do it because passion and desire and everything that comes along with it. I just, some guys are, made to join the military or, join to be a cop. So I really enjoy doing what I do. I'm always looking for an opportunity. I wouldn't consider myself this huge hustler, but I always have my eyes and ears open and waiting for a good opportunity. Balancing my life, I'm just your average guy. I go to work. I like to play golf. I like to do things that the average guy does. Family's big to me and balancing that out as well. But at the end of the day, we want to provide at a big scale for all of our family.
Does your background as a cop provide any kind of advantages in flipping?
I wouldn't say they provide any advantages. Anybody that's savvy enough, there are certain things through the course of being in law enforcement. You hear, calls that cops go do and make reports on. And some things, because they pique your interest, you kind of listen a little bit more closely. So some of the things that I learned, there's a lot of people in every decent sized cities out here who are just in a world of crime, right? And, burglary is one of those crimes that happen in every city at a high rate. So to minimize your chance of being a victim or somebody taking advantage of you or cutting into your profits, there are certain things that I think people who are getting into this should know. I know for sure that there's people that drive around the city, especially at night, and they're just looking for dumpsters out in the driveway or out front of the house because they know that more likely than not, that dumpster is being used to clean out this house, So for guys like this, they know that if they get into this house, there's a pretty good chance that nobody's inside of it. So that increases the chances of not, getting the cops called on you. So certain things that you should do, like when you're doing a rehab, you start off, gutting this place out or cleaning it out. Try to have things and like the people in place to limited the time that the dumpster has to be out in your driveway or out front of the house, because when it's there for several days upon days after day after day, your house could be a target. They could write it down and they could either try to go inside of it or they could wait till you start putting things up, and then they know that this house is being fixed up. Another thing too is like try to have and it's not always possible, but line up all the guys that are going to do the work, or if you're going to do the work, try to time it where you're not having things inside the house for a long period of time. For example, flooring, or if you put an HVAC system on, people might be watching what you're doing, or they'll see the improvement of the house. The last thing you want to do is put a unit in and it's brand new and they could take it. People do that all the time. I always tell guys that are into this, I say, hey, every once in a while, switch out, leave a light on, but switch it throughout the house. One day you might leave the light on in the kitchen. The next day you might leave it on in the room. Try to secure your doors as best as possible. If there's certain things that you could do, some people put several 2x4s across the way and secure it, or they put those hooks that put like a rebar through it. Secure your garage door. Make sure that they, try to cover your windows, but that's also a sign too. When your windows are completely covered up, that's like kind of a sign for them. But put something in there where they can't look into the house. That way they can't see what you may have that they could take advantage of. One of the most important things that I think that I do is that when we go get a property, we talk to the neighborhood, we talk to all the people living on that block for the most part, and let them know that what we're doing, we're trying to improve this neighborhood by adding value to this house, and we're going to be in and out. These are the cars that you should be seeing for the most part. There may be some workers that come and go, but for the most part, you're going to see like my truck, you're going to see my partner's vehicle, you're going to see us in and out, And we tell them, hey, sometimes after 7, 8 o'clock, there should be nobody at the house. If you see somebody, please give me a call, and you give them either your phone number or a business card, and you'd be amazed. They may not call the police, but they'll call you. I think that's one way, especially if you're buying in a house where a lot of people actually own their house. They want to add value to their house too, and they know that by you fixing up a house, it's going to add value to that block. It's going to help them at the long run. But these guys will call you, and they may not call the police, but they'll call you, and then you can see what's going on. I had a guy who, he called me one time at a house, and this guy did kick our door in, but this guy, he actually called the police and he called me. So we were able to respond pretty quick, secure the house, secure the door, fix it. There was limited loss on what this guy did, but the thing is, it still happens. The reason why I think this guy did it is because we just had a dumpster at the house, like the day prior, and we only had it out there for 2 days. So anybody could be a victim, but there are steps that you could take. But the guy called, and at the end of the day, I bought that guy a big old 24-pack of beer just for keeping eyes on my property, though, So it's little small things like that you could do. The key thing is try to take steps to prevent, from somebody thinking that the house is vacant, and also contacting those neighbors. It's huge, because they like it. They want, their house, their block to be nice, and they don't want, the riffraff of crime in their block. So they're going to do the things that they could do to help, the block, and also help you as well.
That's really interesting. And honestly, it sounds like you've developed some effective strategies for managing security risks during the flipping process. So could you share more about how you coordinate with your team schedule to avoid drawing attention, and kind of what steps you take to ensure the safety of your property during those renovations?
Everything's about how busy the guy that you're using is. Sometimes, dealing with these contractors or guys who are doing work, you got to have a lot of patience and know that they're not just working for you. Some of these guys, for example, a plumber, by the time he calls you and he schedules you, something may come up to a bigger person that's more important to him. Say he has an account, a huge account with this guy. Well, he's probably going to take care of that account before he gets to you, right? So you might have had him scheduled and now he can't come for 1 or 2 days, or he's going to come at night, or whatever it may be. So, but you try to have people as smooth as possible. You know what I mean? You don't want a bunch of people in the house at the same time, just because I think sometimes they're in their own way. But you don't want to put flooring down before you painted the house inside. You know what I mean? It's could be a recipe for disaster. But I just try to figure out, availability, who could come, and sometimes I'm not saying it's got to be A through F, but sometimes you want to make sure what the availability is, try to get them in there, and then try to work around their schedule and around the other people. But as smooth as possible. That's how you want it to be. But sometimes you got to understand that sometimes there may be two different companies, working there, or you may be working there and the guy could only come up at that time, but you want to have an idea. I mean, you could probably write it down, but you want to have an idea of what their availability is. Like, for example, if you're going to have the electrical guy working from the kitchen all the way to the bathroom, you don't want the guy in the bathroom working there that day. You know already what's going to happen. Time is everything sometimes, especially for huge investors. So you don't want to waste time. And also having a good amount of contacts of people who could do some of the work that either you can't do or you don't want to do. You know what I mean? Because if you just have one contact, he may be hard to schedule, or he may be increasing your prices. So you want to have, not saying a huge selection, but at least a decent selection.
Finding these reliable contractors can probably be a bit challenging. So could you share your approach to hiring and vetting these contractors to ensure that they are skilled, reliable, and trustworthy?
Because I'm older, I own several houses myself. So through the course of my lifetime, I've been able to develop some friendships of guys who do work, you know what I mean? And then when you start investing, you use them. So for me, it's more, I've been here a long time. I've gotten to know people. I meet people all the time. I may see a job that was done and I inquire who did this, and, might get their name and give them a shout, send them a text, say, hey, listen, I sometimes I flip houses, would you be interested in working for me or doing some work for me? And, some guys will tell you straight up, hey man, I'm super busy. I'm going to shoot you a highest price. And if you accept it, I'll do the job, but I don't need to do extra work. So that's the guy that you're like, I'm going to check that guy off, But I guess through the course of just being here a long time, I've gotten to know people, and I wouldn't say that there's a vetting process that I do. I want to see, hey, this is what I want done. They'll give you an estimate, and if there's any doubt, it might be too high, then I might just get a second estimate. But like I said, just being able to interact with people and chit chat with people, I've been able to get a list of a lot of guys who could do, because the main things in a house, it's your roof, your foundation, HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. And out of those 5 things, I probably have 3 or 4 guys who could do each one of those things, you know what I mean? But like I said, just being here a long time, I've been able to develop those relationships or those acquaintances, and it makes it easier when you have that list of people. I will say, as an investor, before you try to get a property, I would really try to get to meet several people who could do work on a house. You know what I mean? Don't just have one guy who could do it all. Have several guys who do good work, but still they're affordable, and inquire about pricing. That way you have an idea. Like, for example, if a guy's got to install a whole HVAC unit in a house that's 1,200 square feet, he may charge probably $4,800. Well, you already have an idea what that cost is going to be, give or take on square footage and how much duct work they got to do and stuff like that. But you have a ballpark figure, though, you know what I mean? I mean, they're still going to be a phone call away, but you don't have to bother that person so much.
Sounds like contractors seem to be a very crucial part of this journey. Speaking of this journey in real estate, I'm curious about your decision to focus on flipping houses specifically. What factors influenced your decision to focus on flipping houses as your main real estate investment strategy instead of the other available options out there?
To me personally, it was just because of what I do full time for a living. I just figured I could avoid headaches and problems. I just mentally, I thought it would be a better option. I know that it's not probably the best option. I never wanted problems or headaches in my full-time job. You know what I mean? When you rent, long term, that's probably the best avenue to go. But I always feared the fact that if I buy a house, I make still owe on the house, right? So just because you can't pay me as a renter, I still have to pay the bank. So I knew that I didn't want to go up there and cause a scene like, you have to pay me. I need this money. And then them reporting to me that I was rude, I was just, whatever. So to avoid all that, I just decided, like, I fix a house, I buy a house, I fix it up and I sell it. I'm not having to deal with anybody other than the buyer at the end. You know what I mean? And that's why I always decided to go that way. Now, once I retire, I think more likely than not get into the rental business. And I know guys that work with me who have rentals, you know what I mean? And they haven't had any huge problems. But that's just a personal choice. It's just a personal choice.
I would like to delve into your property acquisition process for flipping. Could you elaborate on the methods you use to discover and select the properties that you undertake for your projects?
I'm not buying 10 houses a year, so my scale is a little bit easier. I try to get into a little bit of wholesaling houses, but honestly, I just didn't have the time that you needed to be real successful. So the best thing, I'm on the street a lot, so I'm driving in a lot of different neighborhoods, so I see a lot of houses. So when I see a house that looks like it's in distress, I will either take a picture of it or write it down or send myself a text. And then on my free time, I will try to do whatever I can, through the resources that you could find to find who the owner is. I usually will give them a call, see if they're interested in selling the house, and then hopefully, if they agree to terms, you purchase the house. So people call that driving for dollars. I'm not really driving for dollars. I just happen to be on the streets, and I'm in a lot of neighborhoods, so I could take advantage of that. It's nothing but a picture or a text to myself. I've done some core requests, and I will contact the city. I will tell them I will request from them. Like in Texas, I want to know in the last 12 months how many houses in this city you guys have placard for whatever reason, unsafe or unlivable, whatever. I want a list of all these houses. So then, within a week, I'll have a list in the last 12 months of houses that they placard. So then I'll go and find out who actually owns these houses and try to contact them. And I'm not saying I've been super successful, but I've been able to purchase some houses that were placard, and because the owner was tired of the city messing with them, or just didn't have the money to fix it, or wasn't interested, or was just, a tired landlord, then you make an agreement and you purchase the house. That's one reason, you know what I mean? I'll request to a city like, hey, in the last 12 months or 6 months, whatever it may be, I want to know how many fire calls your fire department responded to. So then they'll give me a list of all these houses or businesses that they've responded to. You know what I mean? You don't know exactly, how bad it was burnt, but you definitely know there was a fire there. Fire department responded to it. So now you have a list. I mean, it could be, 60 or 70 houses in the last 12 months that the fire department responded to these fire calls. So now you have a list, of burnt properties. And then once again, you find out who owns the property. You try to contact them and see if you're able to even get a hold of them. And if you do, a lot of times they're not, I'm going to get some insurance money, I'm going to fix it up. They're off my list, scratch them off, and then move on to the next list. The easiest thing is to have a good relationship with several wholesalers and then have them throw you houses your way. And if the numbers match up and it's a good deal, then you jump on it. That's the easiest way to obtain a property from my experience. But there's also, if I could eliminate the wholesaler, that's just more money that you're going to be able to put in your pocket.
I would like to shift our focus to kind of how you finance these deals and make them viable for flipping. Could you also share insights into your typical profit margins and how you aim to maximize returns on these projects?
You want to have at least 25%. So if you buy a property at 50 grand and the after repair value is 100 grand, so that there's only $25,000 that you could use to rehab it. Those are the numbers. I know some guys will play with more numbers. They say, sometimes they'll say 25 is a little too high, but those are just the numbers that right now at this time we want to look at. You know what I mean? You limit yourself because of sometimes of those numbers. But the real estate market is changing so much sometimes. So one of the things you want to do, like as you're rehabbing it, you got to know what you want to put into it. You know what I mean? You don't want to just put lipstick on a pig, like they say. You want to make it where somebody's going to walk in there and say, wow, this is a nice house. Because remember, selling these houses, I'm not renting them, I'm selling them. So you as a buyer and me as a buyer, I don't want to buy junk. I want to buy something that's nice. Somebody took the time to fix this up and made this little house, this older house, into a nice, house. And when you walk in, kind of like you're interested in it. So some of the things, some of the budgets that you go for, like light cosmetic, there's heavy cosmetic, there's light rehab, heavy rehab, or complete rehab. So some of the numbers that I try to play with, on the light cosmetic, you're probably looking between $10 to $14 a square foot. So you want to calculate, $10 per square foot. That's just, maybe a little bit of a paint job on the inside, maybe outside, maybe touch up the cabinets, maybe, just small stuff. Heavy cosmetic, that's probably interior and exterior paint. You're not having a contractor really go in there. Then you have your light rehab. That could be something, like I said, that's $18 to $20 a square foot. You could be doing a light rehab. You could be doing, maybe changing out the floors, maybe putting some doors in, maybe some faucets, stuff like that. And then a complete rehab, you're probably looking at $25 plus a square foot. You're doing you're redoing the whole house. Those are just some basic numbers that you want to have, because then you calculate, what you bought it for, all the items that you're going to have to buy, and the contractors you're going to have to pay for their services, or if you're going to do it yourself. And then you want to stay within budget to have hopefully a 25% on your return.
Could you elaborate on how you manage different budget types, such as like heavy rehab versus like light cosmetic, to ensure your profit margins are met? And additionally, like how do you handle those, unexpected or hidden issues that just arise during your flipping process while still maintaining profitability?
To answer your last question, the unexpected things, that's what it is. They're unexpected, right? Sometimes, you think you're all there and then something unforeseen has to be handled, it has to be fixed. So you may be cutting into that 25%, might be cutting into your profit. Those are things that sometimes just happen. So, you know what I mean? But you want to hopefully, know when you're looking at a heavy rehab, I'm looking at between $20 to $22 a square foot. You kind of know what you want to do. For example, you have a bathroom that's, it's not going to work. So, okay, what is it going to take? So, you got to have a toilet. I want to put a new toilet. How much does the toilet cost? Let's say it's $200. You write that down. A cabinet, that's going to be, $349. The shower, the tub, how much is that going to cost? You're going to put an insert. What are you going to do? So that's going to be, let's say, $600. The shower head, $100. So all these little things, you always want to go a little bit higher because sometimes the prices are changing. You know what I mean? Same thing with wood. Wood sometimes, it's not very. It has ups and downs here lately, but how many 2x4s you're going to need? The smallest thing to the largest thing, you want to write it all down and put a price to it. Are you going to do the work yourself, or are you going to pay somebody to do this work? Hey, now you got to get a bid. Hey, how much are you going to charge to install these 2 sinks? And install the bathroom. So you write everything down, and then you add it all up, and for the most part, what the cost is going to be. Like you said, on your last question, is there are some things, let's say the guy's going to work in a tub and tub's unbalanced because the wood, the subflooring is rotted out or whatever. So now you got to rip that up. So now you got to find plywood, for the subflooring. And the guy goes, hey, the decking is kind of bad. Because once you rip up the subflooring, you looked at the decking and it's not good. So what is he going to charge you to fix it? Now you got to buy materials. So some things like that are, it's just, if you want to do it right, they got to get done.
Considering the importance of budget management in flipping projects, I'd like to explore the timeline aspect. So could you kind of provide insights into how long a typical flip takes from acquisition to sale?
But every house varies depending on how motivated you are, how available your contractors are, how available the materials are, how big is the project, is it a light rehab, you're doing a whole complete rehab, you know what I mean? Unless you have a bunch of guys working for you, a complete rehab is going to take you months, you know what I mean? It could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months. But it all depends, again, the availability of stuff, the availability of your contractors, permits, you got to wait on permits, all this stuff that takes place. So it's kind of hard to put a number on it from the time you acquire the house to the time you sell it. It just depends. I mean, it's one of those things you got to know, if all you got to do is paint the house and paint the exterior, well, that's going to be done quickly. I mean, that you could do yourself probably, and you get it knocked out in 2 or 3 days. It just depends. It's hard to put an answer to that. You know what I mean? There's some guys, this is their full-time job, so they may have a crew who does work for them. So they could probably push out a full rehab, a complete rehab, in 2 to 4 months. Their availability to get things done is going to be a lot quicker than mine because I don't have that. So it just depends on, I guess, what stage you're on. You know what I mean? I have to rely on people. You might have somebody, an investor, who has people under him, so he will be able to turn a house a lot faster than I will. So it just depends on how much work needs to be done, the availability of contractors or workers.
I can imagine that managing these projects takes a significant amount of time and effort. Do you go into this solo, or do you have any partners or like an investment team that you kind of collaborate with to streamline the flipping process and maximize efficiency?
Now, I have a partner, and like I said, he also has his resources, but it's not really a huge undertaking. If you know what needs to get done and you have the people who get it done, you just got to work around their schedule. Just communication, and just know that there's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be things that are not going to go your way. I mean, that's called life, right? So, all this is time, and it's the house sitting. What you don't want to do is take steps to limit the things that could take place where somebody breaks into your house because it's been sitting and you gave them signs that it's been sitting and it's vacant. Take those measures not to have these things happen to you, because if you have such a bad experience in doing something, there's a good chance you won't do that again. So there's money in real estate. There's money for everybody in real estate. But if you have so many headaches and so many hoops and you don't make money, there's a good chance that you probably won't do it. So just know that there's going to be setbacks. But while you're having these setbacks, don't just have this house sit there. Go to the house. Check up on the house. Make sure you don't have a water leak. Make sure your water's turned off. Make sure your light's on. That way they think that somebody's there. Another big thing too that I didn't mention before is like if you have a spare car or several spare cars, it's change it up. Have a car one day in front of the street. The next day have another car or the same car. Put it in the driveway. You know what I mean? That way, if somebody's eyeing your property to burglarize you or do something or take something from your house, they're guessing too, right? So if they see a car in the driveway, there's a less chance that they're going to just kick the front door in. Eliminate those things. That way you're not having to do additional work.
Could you shed some light on your strategies for finding buyers and navigating the buying process to ensure successful transactions?
I don't really, I have a realtor that I used to sell the property. So we try to do the best job possible and not cut any corners when we're putting these houses together. The last house we had, I want to say it was on the market for 24 hours and we had over 5 offers on the house. The inspector came in to look at the property and they didn't find anything wrong with the house. As far as the seller aspect, I'm not selling it to another investor. There's a realtor involved and he does what he has to do to market the house. I know that cuts into your profits. I don't do for sale by owner. I just have a realtor sell the property.
I would love to hear what you kind of learned all this education from. Do you have any good podcasts or books or kind of content or maybe events that you could recommend that people who are interested in this topic could get into?
As far as events, I think every major city or every decent sized cities, they'll have real estate meetups. So they do those once a month. I know other guys they'll have their own little personal meetups. They're giving their knowledge, just different strategies, different options, give them hope, keep pushing them. I know a guy personally that he does these meetups. He doesn't charge a dime, and this is in West Texas. And he's just a good dude. We talk every so often, and he wants to give back. He wants to give back to other investors like him. So he first started doing like a cigar club, and a lot of guys didn't like to smoke, so he redid it, and now they just meet up, once a month. And he's not charging anything. He could charge several $100s for these meetups, but he just wants to give back, empower these investors too, because he always tells me, man, there's plenty for everybody. If you want to put in the work, you have profits. The first book I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I hope I pronounced his name right. I read another book, Flipping Houses for Dummies. I think it was written by Ralph Roberts. And then another book that I read is How to Find, Fix, and Sell Homes for Profit. And that's by Rick Villani and Clay Davis. And a lot of these things, they're not like, like they discovered the world. It's just practical stuff and how to put your mind, have options, And you could interview 10 different guys, and they may have totally different strategies. You got to find what works for you and what level you want to operate on. I am not on a high level, and I don't have the time to be on a high level, but I do know what works for me. I'm not saying like if I could get 2 houses to flip a year or 1 house, it's great. I made extra money. So by my process, driving around, I'm on the street already. It's not like I'm having to do extra. I'm driving around anyways for a living. So if I find a house, I have learned steps in how to find out who these homeowner is. Just a simple phone call. If you're able to, find out who the owner is, maybe send them a letter. I know some people do this in postcards. Sometimes they may send a text, just little things like that, And like I said, I'm not trying to go in a grand scale of things. There's times where I may drive around and I may find 4 houses in a day. So coming the weekend, I'm going to try to make these 4+ phone calls and find out if this person is willing to sell a house. You get a lot of rejection. While you're doing this. And that's okay. That's part of the game. Just because they tell you no, or they tell you to, go fly a kite, that's okay, man. I would be pissed too if somebody called me and like, hey, you want to sell your house? And I'm like, what? No, I don't want to sell my house. Get out of here. But that's all right. You don't know what somebody's mind at with this property. So some people may be attached. Some people may want to keep it. Some people may want to fix and flip it themselves. You never know. But you may find somebody who's tired, got this property inherited to them. You may find somebody who's been looking for a buyer. There's a lot of reasons why, but you may be the person that reaches out to them and contacts them. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you, sometimes there's people who've been contacted so many times, they're pissed that you're able to find their number, right? So that's part of the game. It's nothing personal. Don't take it personal. And sometimes you may drive up at the same time that the homeowner's there, and maybe you can engage in a conversation and say, hey, listen, I'm trying to buy houses in this area. You happen to be here. I saw your house. It looks like nobody may be living here. Well, have you ever considered selling your property? But there's guys who have mastered this speech. They have mastered the right words to make somebody want to sell to them. But a lot of it is just getting out there. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's skill. Sometimes it's doing it over and over. It's called experience. So all these things contribute to you trying to get a property. Not everything is free. And we all know this. But, like one of the first things I did was I contacted a guy who he did charge me for his services. You know what I mean? A 10-week course, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And he walked me through the process. He gave me the insight on how stuff works. I know that I'm always one phone call away from this guy if I'm ever in a hiccup or if I'm needing something or if I need more knowledge. Because I paid for his services, I was able to get a good, I'm not saying it made me an expert because I'm not an expert, but it gave me an insight on how this business of acquiring houses and flipping houses works. You know what I mean? So he gave me a baseline, but this guy is at a scale that's a lot higher than mine. So if I'm ever in a pickle or if I need, some guidance, he's just a phone call away. I could call him and, he'll work with me to get me in whatever direction I need to be in. So, but I have put some money into it just to get a knowledge, and it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't super expensive though. And some guys may not need this. I just want people to know this, that some people pay for their service, but you got to get to know him. This is a guy who was in his house, and he's opening this up to not a lot of students, but a couple of students, and it's twice a week. I'm not sure if he's offering this anymore, but like I said, this same guy does stuff. He does meetups for just people who are wanting to come. He doesn't charge anything. He's just providing knowledge and his experiences and where he came from at the start to where he is now. I mean, he has a lot to give to somebody who's wanting to listen. But I did at one point pay for his services, and I got a lot out of it. So sometimes you got to put a little bit of your own skin in there to make sure that you really want to do this. So that's just life in general. I mean, prepare yourself, make contacts, develop friendships, networking. And if you have all those in place, and you have somebody to turn to, that's kind of important too. You have somebody that you can lean on. There's a good chance that you'll be willing to take the plunge, you know what I mean? Because you feel like you got some support.
Awesome. Thank you, Eddie. And I think that perfectly just wraps it up right there. We really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experiences and insights, Eddie.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully somebody will grab a little bit of knowledge and take a chance and not be scared, but also be smart and protect your money.
If you enjoyed that episode, then you may be interested in episode 7 of the TNT podcast with Logan Whitney, who is a commercial real estate appraiser who discusses how appraisals affect the entire real estate industry. Make sure to check out our YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikToks, where we highlight key parts of every episode. If you're not already, make sure to follow us on all of our socials, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, check out our YouTube community and Instagram story to have your questions answered for future guests. And lastly, be sure to tune in every other Monday for a new episode, and enjoy your 529. Later, folks.